Namaskar and good evening. Welcome once again to Sri Aurobindo Center for Advanced Research, the ongoing program in studies in Sri Aurobindo. Today we have the privilege of having with us Mr. Rigved Das, who has worked in Steel Authority of India Limited for many years. He is an electrical engineer and has been passionate about his work, about science, and about philosophy. It is in Sri Aurobindo that he found a combination, a coordination, and a culmination of science and spirituality, science and philosophy. An ardent devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and a learner, a scholar, a seeker of Sri Aurobindo's writings. Mr. Rigved Das has been studying his works and has been very closely associated with SAKAR, Sri Aurobindo Center for Advanced Research, since many years, since he did his MA at SAKAR, and after that, he went on to do a lot of transcription works as well as did some editing for us as well. So his passion has been to study Sri Aurobindo and other various scientists of the present day world. And now I invite Mr. Rigved Das, as we call him Rigved Dada, to share with us a very interesting concept of sacrifice and the origin of the universe. So over to you, Rigved.
Thank you, Shruti. This. Once again, thank you, Shruti. Today's topic is sacrifice and origin of universe. It's very difficult to know what exactly is sacrifice because we see so many different varieties of sacrifice in world around. And more difficult is the riddle of origin of universe. But when you touch the spirituality, you find that this difficulty goes because these are the things which has been already written in our Vedas. And then once you start reading Sri Aurobindo, you will come to know that how simply he has placed all those big riddles, technical jargons, everything in a simple concept. I find it so. And today, whatever I am going to share with you, it is basically my personal experience, my personal understanding of science, not of spirituality, of science. And from that, I will try to derive that if we can at all say that this is what science also says. So that is my very humble attempt. So let us see if I can do that properly or not. So coming to the topic, we have often heard of the idea of sacrifice. Well, what exactly is this concept of sacrifice? It is perhaps in all the religions, all over the world. The question of sacrifice, it comes in different forms. Sometimes it is surrender, sometimes it is self-offering, sometimes it is self-giving. And then in our Vedas, we have something known as Yagnya, which nowadays we basically feel that Yagnya is a type of very ritualistic mode of sacrifice. But then what exactly is sacrifice? We will try to see it gradually. So there are many other concepts which have been woven around the term sacrifice. I started with a quote from Gita, chapter 3, quote 10 and 11, slok number 10 and 11, where Sri Krishna says, "With sacrifice the Lord of creature of old created creatures and said, by this shall you bring forth fruits or offspring. Let this be your milker of desire." Strangely, how Lord can create this universe out of sacrifice. We don't understand that. Okay, so we take the help, as I told you, we will always take the help from Sri Aurobindo and the mother to understand all small concepts, all concepts. Okay, so I will read a passage from Sri Aurobindo. The law of sacrifice is common divine action that was thrown out into the world in its beginning as a symbol of solidarity of the universe. It is by the attraction of this law that a divinizing principle, a saving power, descends to limit and correct and gradually to eliminate the error of an egoistic and self-divided creation. This descent, this sacrifice of Purusha, the divine soul, submitting itself to force and matter, so that it may inform and illuminate them, is a seed of redemption of this world of inconscience and ignorance. The key word is this sacrifice is a seed of redemption. By this, the ultimate redemption is made effective. Well, when we read these lines, it is very typically Sri Aurobindo's line, which is difficult to decipher. But then we always, when you don't understand Sri Aurobindo, you take help from mother. So mother makes it very clear in a very simple language. She will tell you what it is all about. So there is a story which mothers used to share with school children of Patanjali. And I have heard it from Anandada, but most of the people in Patanjali, they know this story. She says, when the Supreme wanted to create the universe, he brings forth a different aspect of himself. Now, what is this different aspect of himself? Because Supreme, as we know it, it is a pure consciousness, Sat Chit Anand. So consciousness as such, as a matter of fact, it cannot work. It cannot do any, because it lacks power, it lacks energy, it cannot manifest. To manifest, he brings out Chit Shakti, conscious force. This conscious force, Veda says, gives a name. It is Aditi. And we, Aurobindonian, if I can call at all myself, we know this Aditi is the Divine Mother, our beloved Divine Mother. Now she herself is telling this story to the children of the ashram. She says, when Chit Shakti, first it was Chit Shakti who came in front. And then she created 4 of her aspects. These 4 aspects are love, knowledge, life, and light. And told them, now you go and create the world or the universe. So initially they worked out very well. They are following the guidelines of the Supreme, and they were working in alignment with the Supreme thought. But then gradually, these 4 powers thought that we are independent. We can do whatever you want. So what happens? When they are not dependent on the divine and they feel that they are independent to do whatever you want, then they fall into inconscience. This inconscience is falsehood, ignorance, darkness, death. And thus, after some time, when Aditi or the Chit Shakti, she finds that this world is not like what we had conceived it earlier. It has become just the opposite of it. what is to be done? She approaches the Purusha. Now, she asks Purusha that now such and such thing has happened. Why don't you help us? Why don't you save this incident? So Purusha says, don't worry. I will myself plunge into this inconscience and then attract it from there to the divinity. So there is no problem. Purusha plunges into the inconscience, and then the world becomes stable, and then it starts its journey back to the divine. This is the story what Mother shares with the ashram boys. Now, so from here we have understood that coming back from the inconscient to the consciousness is basically nothing but yoga. Then, what is yoga? Yoga is very simple. When you start feeling the day or the moment you start feeling that you are very much dependent on the divine and you cannot do any action, you cannot do any work, your journey towards the divine begins. Until you feel that divine is not required, it is not for me, we have got no inclination towards it, till that time you are in the ignorance, inconscience, and all that. So this is a very simple story which most of the people say no. And then we also have this thought in these lines of Sri Aurobindo Savitri, where he says, when all was plunged in negating void, non-being's night could never have been saved if being had not plunged into the dark. That's such a lovely story, that being had to plunge himself into the dark to save the non-being's night. Now, the modern concept, modern story. As all of you know, that moderns, after a lot of discussion and very recently in this 20th century only, you will find that all scientists have agreed to one point, that the universe began, or the time began, with the Big Bang. I am just bringing this Big Bang here in this session because I will try to show that it has got a very close link with what Mother has told. Perhaps Mother has never used the word Big Bang, but the flow of the story, or flow of things, are exactly what Mother has told. So just let me share it with you. You will also agree, I'm sure. So what happens? In the beginning, there was a single point, which science says point of singularity. This singularity is a point where the total matter, energy, time, and space of the universe has gone back and been there. There is nothing in the point of singularity, there is nothing except singularity. There is no space, no time, no matter, no energy. So everything has condensed in single point. Now, this point we say in science, we say singularity, but in spirituality or philosophy, it is known as Brahma Bindu, a Bindu from where everything has started. So what happens next? What happens is that from this point of singularity, there was an explosion. Why there was an explosion? Nobody knows. Even science is not very clear why there was the explosion. And if you go to the mother story, we know that Brahman Purusha wanted to manifest himself, to experience himself. For what? For Ananda. That is the story which we have heard. Now, the modern story starts from the Big Bang. It has exploded. But exploded, it has not scattered. It was just there because there was no space. Absolutely, there was no space. So it exploded and it was there. But one thing came from the explosion. Your force came from the explosion. There was 4 basic forces. They are gravity, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, and electromagnetic force. These were the 4 forces which came. So once they came, the gravity separated itself from rest of the 3. The moment the gravity separated from there, science says that it is because of the drop in temperature. After the explosion, the temperature dropped. From the initial state to this state, the temperature dropped because there is a bit of expansion there. So gravity came out of the 3. Then these 3 started moving a little bit. And then finally there was a cooling, and the strong electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, it separated out. The moment these 2 separated out, this is gravity and strong electromagnetic force separated out, the whole, the combination or amalgam, it became basically very weak. So immediately it rose it increased from the size of an atom to size of a basketball. You can understand that it was there the size. What is the size of an atom and what is the size of a basketball? If you are interested, you will get this story in National Geography. You click YouTube, National Geography, your clipping number 101. It's a very small story of 5 to 6 minutes, not beyond that. So it started inflating. These are actually known as a radiation era. In the that whole time frame is distributed in 4 or 5 epochs. So this is a epoch in the radiation era. So it started increasing, and when it was all of a sudden, in a fraction of a second, when it increased from a size of an atom to a size of a volleyball, the things became unstable. But then stopped. Nobody knew why. Then your weak electromagnetic force and weak nuclear force and electromagnetic force, they separated out. And then there was an expansion. And from there, your basically quarks came, which is a basic particle of so far what we know. These quarks formed proton and neutron. Now, with proton and neutron, you get the basic helium particle. After you get the helium particle, 2 helium particles combine and form hydrogen at different situations, at different temperature, pressure conditions. And then the whole periodic table came from that. Now, if you see this story, I am not going into technical detail of this. But if you see these two stories, there is a great similarity. Both the stories says that it literally came out from nothingness. Our mother's story, though I have not told, but it is believed that it came out of Brahma-bindu. And here it came out of singularity. This is the number 1 similarity. Number 2 similarity is this, that first what came is a force. In mother's story, Aditi came or Chit Shakti came. In this story, in modern story, you have got 4 forces. That's the second similarity. Then third, Now, since both the places there are four forces, we can very easily say, let me try to extrapolate or think a bit rationally. Can we really classify gravity as a love? Can we think of it? That gravity also attracts, love also attracts. Then electromagnetic waves, they are basically light. So first one, your love and light, they have been resolved. They are part of the modern story also. That one is the gravity, another is light. So now we are left with two other things. That is a strong nuclear force and weak nuclear force. Strong nuclear force, I personally feel it is the knowledge which dispersed, which shifted, or which came out first from them. And then the weak nuclear force, which is life. That is my perception. I think it that way. So now you can just think of it. Now, this world is basically made out of these four things. One scientific, one which mother says. But then they are so close that they must be true. What we are saying is gravity is by measurement, by our conceptualization of gravity, we are saying it's a graviton because there is something which attracts. Mother is a level higher than that. She has seen their actual function, how and what they do. So she has named it love. So similarly, if you think of all the four things, you will find that there is a lot truth into mother's story when you see the story of the modern times. Now, till here, it is all very fine. But your modern times, in modern story, you don't find divinity. You absolutely do not find divinity. So now you think that where from we will start, where from the divinity starts, because where the divinity will go. So, but if I say that the modern story believes in one thing, modern scientists, now latest scientists, they believe in consciousness. They don't believe in divine, but they believe in consciousness. Now, if they believe in consciousness, our divine is also consciousness. Satchidanand is consciousness. Nowadays, scientists, if you go to YouTube or you give a Google search, you will get how scientists are trying to find out the mathematical equation of consciousness so that they can say that it has got such and such density, it has got such and such properties. They are trying to find out. I was seeing some time back, but I don't recapitulate it right now. But if you go, you will find it out. So from here, what we understand is that I am now trying to come to the concept of yoga. Yoga, now we have seen sacrifice. We have also seen origin of the universe. Now I am trying to come to the concept of yoga. Yoga means yoga is a thing by doing which you go back to the divine. So what is it? We all do yoga. So now once this is yoga, so in the process of yoga, going towards the divine becomes evolution, and retracting back from divine to the inconscience is become involution. So that's a very complicated your terminology, but it is so simple that if you want to do yoga, you do yoga by only remembering, only by thinking that you are dependent on the divine. Once you have this thought continuously in you, you are actually evolving at a faster rate. Here, I will also touch one thing that what I told you, that the concept of unknown. The concept of unknown is also there. You will see in the Nasadya Sutta, where it says that the whole universe is nothing. It starts from nothingness. There is no earth, no ground, no top, no bottom, no sky, no water. So it is there. Nasadya Sutta is also taking this concept. Sri Aurobindo has beautifully told this in his Life Divine. He says this nothingness is a zero, which is all, or an indefinable infinite, which appears to the mind a blank, because mind grasps only finite construction, but is in fact the only true existence. So mind cannot comprehend that complicated thing, that it is nothing is seen there, nothing is measured there, nothing is experienced there, but still it is all. It is the true existence. This just I wanted to share with you. Now, next we come to the concept of okay. I am missing one thing. I'll tell that to you. I have touched upon. Sorry, I've just lost that link. That I have touched upon consciousness. So now, in Gita, in chapter 2, slok number 16, Sri Krishna says that the thing which was not there in existence cannot be existent, and the thing which is there in existence cannot go out of existence, and thing which is not there in existence cannot come in the existence. Now, science also, as on date, you will see science also believe this concept. We say conservation of energy and conservation of all sort of conservation. Even Albert Einstein says that his basic fourth dimension concept is also saying that okay, energy is not conserved in that way, but somewhere your time and space is conserved. So now, if this is true, if what it says is true, can science deny this divinity? Perhaps science cannot. Keeping this mind, earlier when you used to read Sri Aurobindo Savitri many years back, I used to feel it is quite what you call mystical, or may not be true. But when I read with these things, this understanding, I find every word of that book to be very valuable. In Savitri, he writes, he sleeps in the atom and the burning star. He sleeps in man and God and beast and stone. Because he is there, the inconsigned does its work. Because he is there, the world forgets to die. This is a beautiful passage, line. The world forgets to die. Now, if this is what we have understood, then you can just think of the concept of Sri Aurobindo, that it is the matter through which everything has come out. From matter, because in matter, life, mind, supermind, everything is embedded there. From there, gradually, as the things are evolving, everything is coming out and it is becoming existent, which was not there earlier. Now I will touch upon, since now I think it is by and large I have been able to tell you or express that what is yoga, what is sacrifice, and what is the origin of sacrifice. Then again we will go to that first quote of Sri Aurobindo, what I told, that The law of sacrifice is a common divine action that has been thrown out into the world in its beginning as a symbol of solidarity of the universe. It is by the attraction of this law that the divinizing principle, a saving power, descends to limit and correct and gradually to eliminate the error of egoistic and self-divided creation. This descent, this sacrifice of Purusha, the divine soul submitting itself to the force and matter so that it can inform and illuminate them, is a seed of redemption for this world of inconscience and ignorance. So this creation is self-divided creation, and then it is the attraction of the divine, of this law of sacrifice and the divine, that we go to the divine again. And that is what I have explained to you, that traveling from this inconscience to consciousness is basically what is evolution, and then coming back from divine to inconscience is involution. Now we will try to see what is yoga traditionally. So traditional yoga, I have actually taken it from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which is basically a book on that written by Swami Vivekananda. In this book, in the introduction of this book, Swami Vivekananda writes, that we are the outcome and manifestation of an absolute condition. He says we have come from the absolute condition and are going forward to return again to that absolute. So with this concept of yoga, Swami Vivekananda also agrees to. He says that coming back, retract, we have come from there and one day we will go there. In his rendition, that what I have read, the key sloka, which is in the first chapter, second sloka, Swami Patanjali says, Yogas chitta vidhi vritti nirodha. Yoga is restraining the mind stuff, chitta, from taking various forms, vrittis, taking different type of vrittis. Now, Swamiji gives, in this introduction only, he gives a gist of the complete Yoga Sutra in three steps. He says, first step is Patanjali teaches us the meaning of these waves. What are the vrittis? If you know the vritti, then it will be easier for you to remove the vrittis. So in the first step, he teaches us what are these waves. And in the second, he says the best way to repress them, to stop them. And thirdly, he says how to make one wave so strong as to suppress all other waves. So you suppress them by making one wave which is so strong. This is actually, we'll see that it is that dharana aspect is this, that you make it so strong that all other are suppressed. It is quite, he uses the example of fire eating fire. When only one remains, it will be easy to suppress that also. And when that is gone, this is samadhi of concentration, which is seedless. It leaves nothing, and the soul is manifested just as it is in its own glory. This is what Swamiji's definition, and I think there is, we all will agree to this. But I am more interested in discussing the methodology which Patanjali Yoga Sutra suggests. Now, in this Ashtanga Yoga, you will see there are 8 limbs. The first is Yama. Yama is a limb which is, it basically says don't do this. Okay, so it is a limb for ethical rules and moral conduct, mainly associated with the society and environment, things around you, mainly with that. But okay, you also come in that at times. Then you have niyama. Niyama is what is to be done, the do's. It says basically cleanliness, ahimsa, that is non-violence, then healthy food, and all those things. So what is to be done? It is a sattvic food, and keep yourself very clean, keep every place consecrated, and then you have to approach the path of yoga, to be in the path of yoga. Then third is asana. Now, after having silenced your environment, or taking out the environmental shocks from you, and then taking out the shocks because of your own self, what your mind is putting all the time to you, he says that now you take a posture. So posture is again limiting your body. You have limited your body in one posture and not allowing it to move. Then fourth is pranayama. Now, when you are sitting in a quiet posture, you have a breathe which is moving out and in. Now he says you control that also. Don't let it go erratic. So you are now quietly, you are sat and you have controlled that. Now, next step is pratyahara. Pratyahara is, ahara is what you eat or what you take in. Pratyahara, to stop things from taking inside. So you have to block your mind. You have to, it is Swamiji has defined it as, it is a process of retracting the sensory experience from the external object. You are taking it back from the external object. Then you have dharana, where you hold yourself, you focus yourself. This is what you make one wave very strong so that it suppresses all other wave. Then it is dhyana. When you sit into dhyana, constant dhyana, long dhyana, you meditate and you reach the state of samadhi, which is the seedless self. And there it meets the Parabrahma. So this is basically, if I analyze it from my engineering point of view, I find it is basically extracting impurities. It is one by one extracting all the impurities from the self and only allowing which is pure. That is your pure self. Now we will see what Sri Aurobindo says. In the book The Mother, Sri Aurobindo says, in all that is done in the universe, the divine through his Sakti is behind all action, but he is veiled by his Yog Maya and works through the ego of the Jiva in the lower nature. Now, does he mean that the ego is a part of the divine Shakti? I think so. I take it that way. That ego is also the divine Shakti. It is hidden. It has hidden. The divine has hidden from it. But in some way, it is divine Shakti. Then he says how we will take it. See, it's such a simple technique. Now here comes Sri Aurobindo's technique. It is possible to, he writes it. He says it is possible so to turn life into an act of adoration to the Supreme by the Spirit in one's works. For, says the Gita, he who gives me with a heart of adoration a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or a cup of water, I take and enjoy that offering of his devotion. So, Sri Aurobindo says that you have to do everything by offering it to the divine. He who gives me with a heart of adoration, you have to love everything and give that to the divine. In our case, we give everything to the Divine Mother. We have heard this story 100 times since my childhood that whenever I was in trouble, I used to tell my mom. So mom says, "Ma ke diye de, give it to mother." But I never understood it. I thought, why should I give it to mother? I can give it to my mother, but why that mother who is staying at Pondicherry? But then, after having this, reading this or going through this sacrifice, I understand that it is better, that it is the best possible way to give it to mother. And I have personally experienced it. Now, again, he says, and it is not only any dedicated external gift that can be so offered with love and devotion, but all our thoughts, all our feelings and sensation, all our outward activity and their forms and object can be such gifts to the eternal. Now, this is a great sentence that we have to give all our problems, all our thoughts, all our feelings, all our sensation to the Divine Mother. Because she is the Shakti. She is the Shakti. Because I have another quote from the Mother. You will understand once I read it that you have to give it to her. It is only she who can hold it, nobody else. You might have seen it in your personal life also. If somebody tells something to you, which is very secretive in nature or very sensitive in nature, you cannot hold it for a long time. You have to tell tell it to someone else. Unless you tell it, you are not relieved from that irritation which has come through that information. So Sri Aurobindo is saying that give everything to the eternal. Because if you give it to the eternal, he will take it with pleasure. He will take it. He writes somewhere that he will take it. I take and enjoy that offering of his devotion. He says he will take that. Now, when we read Sri Aurobindo's The Mother book, we come to this, that let your sincerity and surrender be genuine and entire. When you give yourself, give completely, without demand, without condition, without reservation, so that all in you shall belong to the Divine Mother and nothing be left to the ego or given to any other power. This is, I understood that this is the key sentence of integral yoga. We have to give everything to the Mother because we don't want to give it to the ego, to bloat it, to expand it, and then after expansion, ego will burst. But Mother, she will keep it with herself. She will transform it. By transforming it, she transformed me. Now, again, from a purely analytical point of view, or you can say scientific point of view, or engineering point of view, as I told you, Patanjali is more of extraction of impurities from things. But I find Sri Aurobindo has very nicely invoked the divine Shakti in us by telling you remember and offer him. So once you remember the divine, she automatically comes and sits in your heart. And then she is like a universal sponge. You keep on giving her whatever you want. Let it be trash. Let it be something very rotten. It doesn't matter. It will not go anywhere. It will not spoil you. It will transform everything. And honestly, I'll tell you, this is a thing when I read it, perhaps up to a larger extent, it changed my life. It changed the internal commotion of inside me. It changed my perception. And I won't say that I have always got success out of it, But there was no regret. Even if it was a failure, there was no regret. Because regret comes when we give it to the ego. If you give it to the mother, she will not give regrets to you. You will always enjoy her bliss, her ananda. This was my basic idea in picking up this topic of sacrifice and origin of universe. Because once you are able to do it, you will see it gives you such a big solace. And truly now I believe that this is the only path of redemption. Thank you. If there is any question which I can reply, see, I want to make a very honest statement in the beginning. Acha, Anandullah has come. Okay.
Take your questions.
Okay, Dada.
If there's any questions, they can ask you now. If you have any questions, you can post them. We will see if Rigved Das can take up any of your questions. If there's none, we can proceed. Well, let's see, Rigved, till now, there haven't been any questions on the screen. But I think it's been a very beautiful comparison, put in a very simple manner. Neither overtly in a scientific language, nor in any ununderstandable yogic terminology. I think I've done a wonderful job to bring together Gita, Swamiji, and the Sri Aurobindo, the mother, and also the Gita part of it. And then, of course, most beautifully, the Big Bang. Normally, personally, I had never thought in this manner that this Big Bang theory is, in fact, a very beautiful spiritual truth, only seen from this materialistic scientific point of view. But I've learned from you that there could be a very close parallel concept. And I think this question of the expansion of the universe from the what you call the singularity point or point of singularity. We have also in philosophy the question of Bindu Matra, they say. From this Bindu, from this dot, Sri Aurobindo explains that there is the universalization. The first step that comes out is the universalization, where space and time are born. That's what science also is telling us, this expansion, as you said, of the energy. And first, there's expansion of energy that goes around, goes abroad. And then from this energy, which later on shrinks into some kind of matter. It gets the formation of matter, if I'm not too wrong in your explanation. So energy itself transforms into matter. So that's where they would say the planets have come, the earth has come, the sun has come, etc., and etc. So we have in philosophy to the same thing. If the consciousness, as you explained beautifully, which went out, created these four powers. And these four powers, which of course they go wrong, but there is a second creation in which from the supermind, the level comes down to the level of matter. So ultimately, we see a very beautiful parallelism between the origin and the making of matter. So what we would call the question of involution. So let us say the scientific theory has given us the process of involution. But then when it comes to the question of evolution, science halts with the Darwinian theory. That's where we differ. Evolution is also right. From matter has life come, they also say that. Scientists also would say that. But then they get stopped, they get arrested, saying that, survival of the fittest and the forms change, etc. But here is what Sri Aurobindo brings a new idea. From this life itself, something else comes through, a higher consciousness. I think that's the way where we part with the scientific theory. Otherwise, up until then, we are very close. And of course, what you quoted from the Gita is marvelous. And I liked one of your quotations from Sri Aurobindo, the very first quotation, where you say sacrifice is the law of creation. Yeah, and the mother also Sri Aurobindo says the same thing. It's a sacrifice of the divine Shakti, it's not the sacrifice of the Purusha. It's a sacrifice of the divine mother, he says. That's it. Because sacrifice is a question of going out and saving, creating this world, and bringing this matter back. So all these questions that you have dealt in brief have been, I think, dealt very well. And maybe as a next step, you could study a little bit how about this evolution. Where does Sri Aurobindo begin and where does Darwinian theory they stop and Sri Aurobindo takes off? That would be a little bit of a continuation of what you have been telling just now. That will make it a bit of a rounding off. So you have given the process of evolution and the process of evolution. And of course, Gita also gives the same thing of the evolution, where the Lord says, it is Mama Maya, it's out of my Maya that I've created this world. So everywhere this concept is there, it is He, out of His, Mama Maya is His consciousness. Gita also speaks of the same thing, like Sri Aurobindo would say, as the mother gave the story, that it is out of the supreme consciousness that the world got created. You see the question there. So it is the same thing in Gita, but one thing I would like to point out, what is said about the yoga, Patanjali's yoga. You have done it a very right analysis to say that Patanjali's yoga is a kind of a purification. What you said, purification out of the lower parts, you get rid of them, and then you come to the central consciousness, which is the Atman, which gets to the Paramatman. That's the question of the same aspect is there in Sri Aurobindo's yoga also, where he would talk of the purification. As you remember in the mother, he calls of aspiration, rejection, and surrender.
Yes.
So rejection part is the purification. So this part is common with Patanjali, but Sri Aurobindo, as you rightly pointed out, goes on to the last step, the surrender, which may not be there very much in Patanjali, not that I know much of it, but still, from what I have read, this aspect of surrender is not coming in. So surrender comes close to the Gita. So Sri Aurobindo and Gita are on the same line, because when Lord Krishna ends his Gita, when he says, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja, so that question of Mamekam, to me alone you give me. And Sri Aurobindo's first word and last word of his yoga is surrender. And another point that he emphasized well is surrendering to the mother. That's of great aspect, great importance, because we have been doing the question of surrender to the Purusha aspect. That's also good. You surrender as we have, Bhakti Gan, Bhakti, in our India we have had a long period of bhaktas. But where also they say, Lord is the important thing, give it to Lord, surrender to Lord. But Sri Aurobindo is not giving that. It's not the same surrender that the Bhakti Yoga gives, or those, you have Tukaram, Mirabai, and all of them. They also speak of the same surrender, give oneself to the Lord. But what you have brought out is important, because giving to the Lord is one way, surrendering to the Lord is a very good process of purification, fine. Your ego becomes belittled, it gets washed off little by little, and you do that. But surrendering to the mother, what's the difference? Surrendering to the mother is a question of transformation. So this is a major difference between the old yogas, where they say, give everything to God, and here Sri Aurobindo says, surrender everything to the mother. So we have to make it clear that mother is a transformative force. It is not just a consciousness which only takes from you and then merges your consciousness and links your consciousness with a higher being. Here at every part, she transforms. Transforms what? Transforms your lower nature. That is the philosophy of the transformation of nature that comes in Sri Aurobindo. So maybe you have to emphasize this also, otherwise we may not be able to understand the difference between Gita and Patanjali Yoga and Sri Aurobindo. So they all speak of surrender maybe, but Sri Aurobindo's emphasis on the surrender to the mother is easier and yet more difficult. But in the long run, that's what turns the individual to a spiritual life, as you started telling, remembering the divine at every moment. The more and more we feel that we are dependent on the divine, that's the beginning of spirituality. That comes in Sri Aurobindo. Because at every moment, we are supposed to surrender to the Mother, all our thoughts, all our emotions, and all our acts. So this is our day. See, we are either acting or thinking or having some emotions. So the whole being, if it keeps offering at every minute, what we say, not only yoga in daily life, is yoga every hour. So this constant remembering and offer changes our outer life too. So this is the emphasis I feel. You have done a beautiful job, and I'm sure people have understood. But you have taken a long, big theme, but they're very in simple terms and not too much of quotations in the sense that you have brought out very extremely beautiful central quotes. And Rigved, I must tell you, you have been maybe your first time, but you have done a wonderful job. And you're very relaxed, and I think that's your faith in the divine. The Mother will take care. So that's the kind of relaxation I could see in you, that you are given up to the Mother saying, Ma, you help me, you talk through me. And that's what has happened. So I think I must congratulate you. And just remember, I kind of gave you a summary of your own talk for the benefit of some of the listeners. And I welcome you. I congratulate you once again. Thanks, Rigved. Keep going. Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.